So, namaste and good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our LinkedIn Live today to celebrate International Men's Day. Today, we'll be talking about men's mental health and the burden of patriarchy, brought to you by Sthir. We'll be diving into the unique mental health challenges faced by men, mostly amplified by patriarchy. And we aim to explore how traditional expectations of masculinity impact men's emotional well-being, relationships, and even their willingness to seek help. And it's my great pleasure to welcome two incredible speakers who bring diverse perspectives and expertise to this critical topic. Today, Deepa and Vedant will uncover how patriarchal norms shape men's mental health and discuss actionable ways to break free from these burdens. So, without further ado, let's get started with what promises to be an enlightening and a transformative discussion. Over to you, Deepa and Vedant.
Thanks, Aditi. Deepa, I am so excited to get to talk to you today. I think it's safe to say the honor is all mine because I have felt like this issue of men's mental health has not been given enough discourse in the grand scheme of things. And it is truly a special occasion to get to talk with you about it today. It will be hopefully a very uncomfortable but revealing discussion about, things that as a man, and I'm sure all the men who might be watching this might be able to look at their lives and see it a whole anew. So, with that said, let's get into the conversation with my first question, which is that in India, being a patriarchal society, there is a pressure on men to conform to these very specific archetypes, these very masculine archetypes, namely, the provider, the protector, the alpha male, and many more. And obviously, the pressure that comes with embodying these archetypes can lead to a lot of toxic behavior and also to a lot of detrimental health benefits, mentally and otherwise. So I was wondering if you could shed some more light on how the pressure for men to embody this behavior, how does that manifest, and what kind of damage are we talking about specifically?
Thank you, Vedant. It is such a joy to be able to speak on this topic, which is very close to my heart. After working in the field for close to 30 years, sometimes you realize that what you hear commonly said is sometimes just rhetoric. This is not to put down the feminist movement, not to put down the real issues that women are facing and continue to face. The issues about the girl child, the safety of women is all very true. But as they say, there is no one story, and that there is a danger of the single story, as they say. You cannot look at things only from one angle, and nothing is always anytime black and white. So the fact that men suffer equally or men are affected equally by patriarchy is a fact. And I don't think anyone would refute it. It's just that the popular rhetoric, the popular way we speak about is usually about women, and then the men get left out. The only problem here is that in this process, we end up, while giving justice to one part of society, we have to be careful if you're not being unjust to another. And that's the worry that has always plagued me ever since the time I started working, because it's always been the girl child, the safety of women, and yet we are not looking at our boys and men at all. And we're somehow assuming that they're going to fall in line, just change magically, or they are to be blamed for things. This it has been quite disturbing. Unfortunately, even today, we don't really talk about patriarchy. Patriarchy is also looked upon in a very black and white way. Yes, it means the rule of the father, but the rule of the father that, as simplistically looked at, is not as easy on anyone at all. We would like to believe that patriarchy is easier on the men. It's men versus women. Men have it all good. Everything works in their favor, etc. But again, unfortunately, that's just a story that we like to tell ourselves because we love simplistic stories. So thank you for your question, because I do believe that patriarchy affects men equally, and sometimes in ways so dangerous that we're not even aware of this. So I'll quickly recount, I'll try to make it as simple as possible, because sometimes there's the danger of getting into too much, academic language. And it's also very tempting because we have all the right words. But to start with, I think the first and foremost, harm that is caused to boys and men is, number one, because I'm a mental health practitioner, first and foremost, is emotional repression. And we don't think about it at all, but it starts very early. We talk to our boys in a certain way. We talk to girls in a different way. We are okay with girls showing emotions. We are still not comfortable with boys showing emotions. Things are changing, but they're not changing as much as we think they are. It's good. We do talk a lot, but it's not really put into practice. Now, what happens in emotional repression, when you, because of the situation, boys, very young children, and all the children are same. They all have the same feelings. Their emotional, sensitivity is the same. And yet we encourage girls to speak up, and we actually discourage boys to speak up, because that's just the way. And I don't think it's anybody's fault. It's just the way we've seen things happen. Now, what happens from here is it starts from bottled up feelings, which leads to anxiety. And a lot of boys and men I know, because I've been a counselor for a long time, the number one problem is anxiety. And they don't know where it started, because maybe it started so early they're not able to go back and figure out. Then, of course, with anxiety, then there are anger issues, because when you repress things, of course, you bottle up, there's anxiety, then there's anger, there's violent behavior, there's depression. All these things cascade. That's one of the most, devastating effects of, how do you say, the way we, behave with the boys and men. Another thing comes up is that, patriarchy expects you to be men to be, and boys, okay, we'll start with children and boys. There are these standards of strength and success that are always bandied around, simply put, there is no option, but boys and men have to be told you have to make a living. So you have to choose, your profession accordingly. And they're not allowed to explore anything else, even if they're not willing to do the usual things that men are supposed to do. So basically just choose professions which will help them earn more, and then, because that's one measure of success. And they're also supposed to be strong. They're supposed to be stepping in, helping everyone. Nothing wrong with that. But with this, what happens is that there is a big disconnect between what they're feeling and what they're expected to do. And there is this internal conflict all the time. Children as young as 7 and 8, when I was a school counselor, would come to me and say that I feel very angry because I feel I have to act all the time. Act in front of people, act in class, act as, the older brother, whatever that is. So the child did not understand its role play, but they say, I have to act something that I don't feel. And it starts very, very young. Then the anger issues come from there. Another thing that happens, and this is very unfortunate, it's happening with girls and women also, but this hyper competitive spaces, we somehow, patriarchy makes it, that's how the playing field is, that you're supposed to be competitive. Collaboration is not a word that we use very much when it comes to boys and men. So when you're competitive, you have to keep aside your feelings. So emotional bonds are not set up too well. If they are, they happen by chance, but they're not encouraged. Our girls, we actively encourage to make friends, to speak with friends, to unburden themselves. This is not encouraged in boys at all. Also, another thing that comes up in connection is that because you're not expected to speak up, because you're supposed to be the strong young man, strong boy, there is a lot of stigma around seeking help. Girls will, normally girls in their friend circles or with their families, it's okay if they cry, it's okay if they speak. Forget the crying, even expressing emotions is okay. But many times boys are discouraged, saying, why are you talking so much about feelings? That's not your thing, Just buckle up. It's okay. You've got to learn to deal with the pressure. If you're afraid, face it. There's nothing, you're crying about it won't help. And these are the kind of very subtle messages that we give our children. And then, of course, they will not seek help even if there is a problem. So clearly, if they're not allowed to speak up with their peers or to elders, where are the safe spaces? There aren't any. Many times we use terms like mama's boy, mollycoddled by the mother, a brother with just sister, so he's likely to be a little soft. These are the society, these are the ways the society speaks about it, and that's damaging because you already have a label without doing anything. You just have a label. Then, of course, the conflict increases and increases, which we like to call internalized patriarchy. Because patriarchy is about a set of rules and how to behave, but inside you're feeling exactly the opposite. And there's this conflict which comes on again and again and again all the time. Well, these are, as I said, they could be, I can go on, but these are the major issues that happen and they start very early. There is no space to address them. And of course, things just continue. Many boys and men, most of them, in fact, just manage to carry. Okay, they pull on their inner strength and they just go on. But there are times when they crack, and those also are not forgiven very easily. I can give you examples from my counseling practice, and I like to speak about this, especially for young boys. Just one example I'll give you, and it always breaks my heart to even recount it. There was this young man, he was in standard 12, so must have been around 17, 18 years old. Came to me once. I used to have a room, counselor's room, and he would knock on the door. I would open and he would say, can I come and meet you? And what is a good time? I would give a time and he wouldn't come. So this kept happening over 2, 3, 4 days. And then one day I caught him, I was walking down the corridor and I saw him and I said, I haven't heard from you. What happened? So he's like, can you not speak to me here, please? And he walked away. That was a surprise. Why would he not want to speak to me? But then I realized I'm a counselor. And if you're talking to the counselor, you're probably going to seek help. So he comes to me on a Saturday afternoon after the morning school is over. He comes to me and he says, I've been a good student and all that, but I'm just not able to concentrate on my studies. So I told him, I thought, okay, that's a normal thing. There's a lot of pressure. You've got classes. You don't have, you have to have a strict timetable. He said, no, it's none of those. I just want to share something which I hope you will not share with my teachers or never call my parents. I said, yes, because, the fact that you've come to a counselor means there is, confidentiality is the first thing. So he comes in, she says, do you mind if I shut the door, please? I said, please do that. He bolts the door. He sits there and he cries his heart out. An 18-year-old boy crying without giving any explanations was upsetting. Then I let him cry out and I said, okay, is there something you'd like to talk about? And he says, my father got very angry because I'm into music and I love drums. And that has been my most precious possession. The other day he came home and saw me practicing something after I had finished my studies. Okay. But, and he asked me, why are you playing drums? This is not the time for music. This is time for studies. And I told him that this is the way I de-stress. And he said, well, fine, we'll need to figure that out. The father picked up his set of drums, put it in his car and went away, and came back and told the son that he has sold his drums because this is the only way he can teach a lesson to someone who's playing music in 12th standard. It had scarred the boy so much that he was unable to, he needed therapy for about a month and a half before he could go back to talk to his father or start his. Now, I don't know why would anyone do something like this. He's an intelligent child. He's not, it's not that he was not studying. Why would we do something like this? Something so harsh. It had stayed with him. It stays with him. I'm still in touch with this young man. Of course, he did well. He chose a good profession. He went away, but he decided he's going to live very far away from his parents, that is abroad, and he's going to continue his music there. He plays also. He plays the drums. He's gotten back to his hobby. But something like this, this is this is how it plays out in young men in families. So this is just one example, and this was a very young boy. So it's scary to see what parents are doing, what family, what society is doing, and we think we're doing the right thing by pushing them towards something that we think they need to do without a second thought towards feelings and emotions.
I know exactly what that young man must have been feeling, because when I was in college, I too had made the decision of coming to the US specifically because of the geographical distance between here and home. And when I was in college, I had friends who played music and such. And when I was on the phone one time with my parents, my dad told me, stay away from these friends of yours because they play music. So, there is a very strange need to control the caliber of friends that you have. And even during the orientation, when my parents were there to drop me off, they would tell me, make friends with the Indian kids, make friends with the Chinese kids, because they're all business majors. They're all going to be studying respectable fields. They have respectable interests. So there, I felt very strange when I heard the fact that the idea of making friends with who have your own common interests, the fact that that is wrong seemed very strange. But I also was very interested by what you said about how, you know, keeping these emotions repressed manifest in the form of, being emotionally repressed, being anxious, and all these things. And the story as well about the father and the son, it got me thinking about how the expectation on men to be this kind of father, to be the father that teaches these hard lessons, that
Yes.
preserves, this kind of very moral, I don't want to say sanskari image of
Yeah.
of the perfect family in a way. It can manifest in such ugly ways. So I wanted to ask, how does the pressure on patriarchy of the patriarchy on men, how does that affect the family unit? In particular, how does it affect the relationship between a father and a son, or even a father and a daughter? Because I would think that the patriarchy, or a father with a very patriarchal mindset, would have an absolutely horrific relationship with his kids, even though it might not seem like that on the surface.
Thank you for asking this question, because that's how it plays out, and that's where the trouble starts. Um, the previous generation, the generation of my parents, now they're in their 80s, they had a very simplistic, very simple way of behaving. The fathers and the fathers and children had a very transactional relationship. The father was the person to be feared. If you see the narrative at that time, the mother would always say, "Wait till your father comes home. He's going to fix you." So if you're not behaving well, or if you're doing something that is not appropriate according to the mother, and that could be watching TV for a long time, or not clearing the room, or something very simple like that. Children were not able to do anything really so drastic that there was a problem, but they would. This is how the father figure was created. Most of us, I think it was a little better in my generation, but not fathers were not friendly. Okay, I don't like the word friends because that makes it too simplistic. But fathers were not friendly. Fathers were distant figures who were mostly there to, enforce discipline and be the role model and be the quiet, stoic presence. The mother was the one who managed you day to day, but it was clear that he was the higher authority making the decisions. Money, whether to go out or not, what to do, uh, punishments to be meted out, etc. So we created that father figure. I don't think it was done deliberately, but for the fact that gender roles were so totally spelt out. The father had to do the outside work, basically do the earning, which would practically take the whole day. And it was also very stressful. Again, a father does not share his work stresses at home, because how does that work? You don't share those stresses. So he becomes that stoic person. The mother is the homemaker, everything. So this was a sharp divide. Maybe it worked for some time, but I know people who tell me that they had no conversation with their fathers. They don't remember any conversation with their fathers. And they were okay with that because they were only feared the father. Now it changed a bit when I think people started studying psychology, understanding, and somewhere nuclear families came in where you couldn't be so distant because there were not so many family members looking after. So the fathers started taking some interest, and I think a lot of fathers realized that they enjoyed it. So that was good too. But even then, that distance had to be maintained because parenting was mostly about enforcing, the rules, getting children to do something. Parenting was not fun. Parenting was a duty to be dispensed. So a father was like the principal, the mother was like a kind school teacher. I know this sounds very um, it might sound very odd, but that's how it would be. So what happens when such a thing happens? And I think even uh, with with subsequent generations, I mean, I'm having conversations with parents now, and it is really heartening to see that parents, the fathers come with the daughters and sons. They talk about, the child being happy, etc. Yes, but what happens with the traditional role models, which we follow because we've had our parents like that? First thing is the emotional disconnect. Fathers and children, they're so close, they need to be so close, but there is no emotional connect over there. Fathers live in their own worlds, children in their own worlds, and somewhere they intersect, but that's also very formal. A daughter and father may be a little more because we like to believe that daughters and fathers are close, but I don't know in what way. Sons and fathers are not necessarily close because the father is the one who is keeping tab on the son. I don't even know why this works. I've had very young fathers also say that, no, I'll need to keep a check on him because you know how boys are. And I would say, what do you mean? How are boys? And then they don't have any answer, but they say they need to be controlled, they need to be checked, otherwise they'll go haywire, whatever that means. This leads to a long-term damage because there is no relationship that is set up. Many children, many boys leave home because they're just grateful that they don't have to be around this principal-like figure anymore, which is very sad because that's not what fathers want and that's not what they are. But I think mostly why this happens is because you know this is the strange thing about parenting. We don't have, I like to say this over and over that for all the jobs, for anything we do, there's training. Whatever small thing you do, if you need to take up any work, you need to be trained, you need to be educated. But for parenting, there's no education. So we just learn based all our learning about all our understanding about parenting is from the parents that we see, which could be our parents or our relatives or someone we look up to, which is like 2 or 3 people, and they are not exactly, that's not enough, right? Parenting is not about how someone else does it. So unfortunately, most men will parent, will be the kind of fathers, a little improvement on the fathers that they would. And till date, I have heard young boys say, and this is, I've been in practice for some 25 plus years, the situations remain the same. They tell you that the fathers will tell the sons that, you have so many options, but I think you should do this because this is good for you. This is in no uncertain terms that do it because I ask you to do it. So, of course, there is this emotional connect is not there. Fathers are also known to prioritize work over relationships, and that's upheld. We've heard legendary stories about, how much the father worked, how much a particular father used to get angry, how the whole household used to be scared of their anger. All this leads to long-term damage. As parents, we need to relook how we are doing, how we are parenting, and I would say more about fathers because a child a child looks up to both parents. Their sense of identity is built up from both parents. So a father's influence is huge. And if it's not there, if it's absent, then it leaves a hollow in the child's life for a lifetime. It may uh, manifest in the form of inability to form close connections, inability to form close relationships, because what you have not received, you're not able to give. Mm-hmm. And many times you have the father there and they're doing everything and providing for you, paying the bills, providing a home, but that's not enough. the emotional aspect is many times completely missing. And even today, yeah, young fathers struggle because they want to do it, but they don't know how. Now, this is where, the whole patriarchal, the web of patriarchy, I feel has affected the men so much. They want to do it inside, they know their feelings, but they're afraid to express because they don't see anybody doing it. And apparently, according to them, the world seems to be going on fine. And yet, we have damaged young boys. We have, depression, which is showing up really early in young boys. We have men who are incapable of expressing emotion. And I would dare say that, their close and intimate relationships definitely get affected with their spouses, with their close ones, and of course with the children.
Yeah, I wanted actually to touch on that last point that you made, because sort of tying the conversation that we've had so far, because men are expected to be a certain way because they are programmed to do so through
Yes,
this sort of patriarchal programming that happens
right,
from father to son. And as a result of that emotional stuntedness, I guess you could say, they
right.
don't know how to express their emotions. And the thing is that if you keep that emotion bottled up, at least my understanding of it is that there's only so much that you can keep inside before it
Yes,
comes out in a very ugly, tragic way. And this has taken the form of, domestic violence. It has taken the form of child abuse. It has taken the form of substance abuse, and in the more extreme cases, it has taken the form of rape and sexual assault. So this is just this explosion of emotion, unprocessed, unfiltered emotion that has just been bottling up and is like, like a volcano that has exploded. And in India especially, where we had the pandemic, where men were cloistered with their families and boys were with their families, and many had to move back home with their families and were cooped up for a year and a half to almost 2 years.
yes,
We saw, and it was visibly documented, that there was an alarming spike in
true.
domestic violence cases. So I wanted to ask, because there might be, God forbid, there might be another pandemic around the corner, but with work from home becoming a more commonplace thing, and the culture changing where men can stay at home, and this is something that I've noticed even in my own father, who works as a consultant.
Mm,
He works from home more often now. So
yes.
I wanted to ask, what are some things that we could look at in terms of breaking the how do we even approach men to, convince them that they need to look at this and they need to understand that this is a problem? Because it has become so normalized now that, the idea of a father shouting at his son, or, doing what the father in your story did, taking away his son's drum kit, it's treated as just a normal thing for a father to do. So, what are some things that we can do to kind of break the cycle, if you will?
Okay, I think there's a lot that can be done. First of all, accepting that everything is not fine. That's I think the first step is the hardest because there's no conversation about this. We have conversations about everything, but the fact that half of our society, we are not addressing their issues. And that has been a concern, as I said, of mine right from the beginning, because we've got campaigns for the girl child, campaigns for child sexual abuse, campaigns for domestic violence. We do not have a campaign where we are addressing the issues of men. And I think it's a huge, huge problem. What you mentioned is a major concern about how these things manifested. They became issues of domestic violence, anger, and all that. There's one more thing that I would like to mention here, which nobody really talks about. Again, another hidden thing. Um, the number one reason, when you look at age groups, and I had told myself I'm going to keep away from numbers because they can, you could go somewhere else. But I don't know if you're aware that one of the major reasons, for the death, cause of death for the age group of 18 to 35, which is the youth, the number one COD or cause of death is suicide. Okay, now that's it's worrying. The other part, which is more worrying, is that, and this is a universal fact, that many women attempt I'm talking about an extreme thing, but I need to speak about this. Many women attempt suicide, but many more men succeed. I look at it as an indicator of men's mental health. When somebody takes an extreme step like that, a young person, a middle-aged person, you know, even the farmer suicides, which you might say, are they even connected? Yes, they are, because that's another patriarchal thing.
Mhm.
There are thousands of farmers killing themselves, and these are not poor laborers. These are land-owning farmers. Okay, all these things, when you look at these statistics, you wonder what is going on. Why are so many people, so many men trying to kill themselves and succeeding in it? Succeeding would mean they've really figured it out, and there's no scope for any failure. So that's an extreme step. When does somebody want to end their life? Not because they are tired of their lives. They're not people who are sick or who are waiting for. There's nothing seriously. They're not unwell or anything. It's just that they have given up because they feel there is no more. There is no hope left. So suicide is a huge, huge issue. Domestic violence, where it comes out, where all the anger comes out in the form of domestic violence against the close. It could be intimate partners, it could be families. Then there are anger issues. We have seen road rage. We've all seen road rage, and we don't know what goes on. You don't even know the person who you're angry with. Is a driver there and another driver, and yet there is an explosion of this. At workplaces, we are seeing anger issues rise way beyond what we expect them to be. So all these are, as they say, there is no pressure valve. So the pressure cooker bursts. And when something bursts, of course, it's going to cause havoc. What can we do about it? Something very simple. We need to first start speaking, normalizing and acknowledging and normalizing that men's mental health is a thing. We cannot go on pretending that it's not important or they don't need it simply because we've never done it before. Traditionally, a lot of people say traditionally, men, we've never addressed these issues. But then there are many traditions that we have discarded. There have been some terrible traditions that we've discarded. So can we relook at this entire situation and can we start a dialogue? You'll say, where does it start? It can start anywhere. It can start in homes. It can start in offices. Workplace well-being programs can take them up. The government can actually, I know I don't think it's a tall order because the government has been able to manage a lot of issues that way. I would say that first of all, we need to bring this out of the closet and speak about it. Okay. Once we start doing that on a larger, community level, then there'll be some understanding and people will kind of connect. To give you an example, every time I do group sessions or every time I do, programs on an organization level, I somewhere bring in this issue of men's mental health. And you have to believe me, people sit up and notice and they come to me later or they ask for my number and they say, this is what I'm going through. Can you please help me? Can you please guide me? We take group sessions and the entire group, asks me to, okay, now talk about this. So clearly there is a need. We're just not addressing it. So we need to start the conversation and we need to do it in a systematic way. The government can take up, maybe a media campaign where it can, push this issue about seeking help. And we do have helplines available. And I'm told that this is what I gathered, that the government helpline Kiran, which was started during the pandemic, had an unprecedented number of calls made by men, mostly men calling to find out what was, to seek help. So all the helplines are ringing off their hook. Many men, young men calling, older men calling. We need to normalize. We need to, say that yes, this is an issue, and we need to take cognizance of it. On the individual level, I think we can start speaking in families. There's always the first time. Everything may not be accepted immediately, but you don't know where you will, make an inroad. A lot of, I know that there are organizations working on this, not many. There's one called Men Against Violence and Abuse, and they speak about both. Community health and mental health interventions are speaking about, how are we bringing up our boys? What is toxic masculinity? Why is it happening? And so they're addressing the young boys. So there is some amount of work happening, but I would say not enough, not on the scale that it can happen. We need to basically just bring it out of the box and bring it out there. And there'll be many, levels. Workplaces can talk about this. We do speak on anger management. We do speak on, discussion, how do you say, in group sessions, we talk about feelings. We create psychologically safe spaces. That's another thing we can do. We don't have psychologically safe spaces for men. Okay, women have it. It's institutionalized. We have our groups. There are friend circles. I'm told men in their friends groups also usually like to hang out together over a match and have a drink together. Maybe they will, take a drink, but they will not talk about their feelings simply because nobody's starting it. So I think that's probably the first step, and then things will follow. Helplines dedicated to men, group interventions dedicated to men. So much is possible. Workplaces are, anger management issues are coming up, and they are not. We can't take an issue and isolate it and say, okay, now I'm going to deal with anger issues. But why is it all happening? We need to create all these safe spaces in different fora, and help is available. I think counselors are there, mental health experts are there. Everybody knows, but it's the best kept secret. Nobody's doing it.
You talked about how it's a secret, the best kept secret. And honestly, with this talk, something that has become clearer and clearer to me is that while, we have a lot of female related issues that can be traced back to the patriarchy as the cause, it feels like a lot of the issues that men have in society can also be traced back to the same source. And and the thing is, it's such a almost insidious way it's done, because we are kept so sort of stunted in that respect, we don't even recognize it. But even, we have our fathers, our grandfathers, the teachers, all of these people perpetuating this idea that we're supposed to be this way. And then when it is unleashed in a tragic way, then somehow it's all our fault. And I think hopefully what a lot of men will take from this conversation is that patriarchy affects us too, and not always in a good way. And we really need to be cognizant of that. So I wanted to also ask one more question, which was that when it comes to a man who might say that the patriarchy doesn't exist, how would you go about, what specific examples could you pull that could make him sort of perhaps think differently about it?
Thank you for asking. I thought I will speak about it in the beginning, but then somehow, because the subject is so vast and there's so many things one wants to say. Unpacking patriarchy, we've always looked at it in a very black and white way, and that's how most of us, when we study society and the social problems and all that, patriarchy is the problem for everything. So it becomes a men versus women thing. Okay, now this is literally oversimplifying an issue. Okay, to give you an example, what does patriarchy do? Patriarchy expects that men become the breadwinners. They are the major, they are the principal earners, for want of a better word. The women, of course, we are supposed to also do the same, contribute to the family earnings, but also keep home. Now, somehow it has been, at some point of time, it may have been meaningful when we were in agrarian society. But if I remember well, even in agrarian societies, men and women would work at both. The housework and the childcare somehow became the women's reserve, which is fine. Now look at it in a little, if you look at it intensely, something doesn't seem quite right. To give an example, in contemporary times, even today, when you are talking to young women and they have a career and they get into marriage and all that, and then if a woman says that, well, I need to take a break in order to nurture my family or start a family or maybe just set up home, nobody bats an eyelid. They'll say, fine, come back to work. Try thinking about a man saying that. Go a little behind and say, there are still women today who openly say they'd much rather keep home and they'd prefer not to work outside. we're okay with women saying that. Think about a young man who says, all this education is good. I'm going to get educated, but I think I want to become a homemaker. Just think about that option. When I speak about it in groups, people start laughing. They say, what nonsense, this is not even a possibility. Yes, the Gharjamai jokes come up. The issues where, everybody will say, okay, why would a person want to sit at home? Because we do not think that a man has nurturing capabilities, has a softer side, is emotional. We as a society will, how do you say, uh, push this person down, and it has actually happened. I'm of a generation where, 20, 30, 20, 25 years ago, we graduated almost 3 decades ago. And because we are in the area of social work and development sector, I do have friends who chose to, who wanted to be different, not be the stereotype, typical ones. And they would, there were couples who decided to, divide the work among themselves. And this was in a metropolitan city. The woman would go to work a little early, and the man had his work a little later during the day. They were working with, NGOs or community organizations, and all that he would do was clear the kitchen and wash the clothes and put them out to dry. Now, in a housing society, this was very much visible to everyone else. He would do that. He would go to work. Both of them would come back and all those things. One day, some neighbors came to them, and neighboring men, and they talked to him. They said, we are finding something very disturbing about you two. We see that this man is putting a woman's clothes out to dry, including saris and all that. Can you please stop doing that? Because this is very problematic. And he said, it's my home. Why would it be problematic? He says, so the answer was that you're setting a bad example. Please don't do this, because this is not right. Now, this is how we treat men who want to be equal. So if you're going to try to be different, you're going to be slammed for it. We all know, we've all heard the Ghar Jamai jokes. The Ghar Jamai is, it's a standard joke in all communities saying, oh, this is all you want to do. So basically you are a lazy person. So if you want to do an emotional, if you want to do a nurturing role, if you want to do a homemaker's role, if you want to do the softer aspect where you want to stay at home and look up, no, you will be pulled up for it and your life will be made miserable. This is what patriarchy does to you. As a young man, you don't have an option to do anything other than be the principal breadwinner. That's one thing. Then you see all our ads. Okay, I can't stop saying this. Every time there's a festival, you have these ads about, women, about what is this, jewelry and diamonds. So this is what you're supposed to provide. Okay, you're supposed to provide for your family, but you're also supposed to provide things which will make you, which will make you seem that yes, you are the complete man by providing so and so. So if you buy a diamond, then you are a great husband, you're a great father, whatever. Now imagine the amount of pressure it puts on people. I know for sure that, in my counseling practice, men have come to me and said that I don't enjoy doing this, but I need to find other ways of making money because the pressure to do things is tremendous. I need to buy this gold. I need to buy this jewelry. I need to spend so much money in my daughter's wedding. It's like it's a terrible thing for someone to go through. And this is, nobody listens to, there's no, as they say, the father there's nowhere to go. You have to provide. And even if you sell yourself, it's okay. We've heard stories about people saying, I want to sell my kidney because I want to do this for my family. Now, that's the intense pressure that patriarchy puts on you as a person. You don't have a choice. You have to be the family provider. You must get the money from wherever. It doesn't matter what you do for it. Single parents, again, find it very hard because they're always judged for what they're doing because men are not supposed to be good at certain things. And this is just an assumption. So patriarchy, if it's hard on women, I think it's much harder on men. I also feel that this whole dowry thing, which is becoming a don't give dowry to, why would anybody ask for dowry? Sometimes we create a situation where the person is, compelled because you just have to keep that face in your society because everybody else is doing that. And then they might be doing things which are, well, not very straightforward because in order to do something, you will definitely find ways and you will make that happen. That's one thing. The choice of profession, I would say now in counseling, many times I get a request that we need a male counselor because we want a man to speak to so-and-so. There's a request. And that's one of the toughest requests that I come to. The example is now, we could not find someone to speak about the burden of patriarchy because there aren't enough male counselors. The ones who are there are so busy that you don't have time. They wouldn't have time to come away and maybe for an hour and do this. Because men wouldn't choose to be in professions like these, which are softer professions, which are talking about feelings and all that. So that's another burden. You can't choose what to do. You are burdened with looking after the family. You're supposed to be stoic. You're supposed to provide till you die. And then you're also supposed to take the flak of being a man and not being good enough. Now, how good is patriarchy for men? It's a system where things are thrust upon them, and they are just told to just bear with it, grin and bear with it. It starts very young. It starts with young boys being told to behave, to not cry when they are hurt, to suppress their feelings. So it starts early, and then it just bottles up, and then it comes up as like a pressure cooker. You don't have that valve, and then so this is how it manifests. So in so many very obvious and clear ways.
It's honestly, yeah, I once heard it put in a very very succinct way, which is that it robs men of the dignity of their decisions, that they can't make their own decisions in life, and they're expected to make it for others or with others in mind. So I wanted to switch now to some of the user submitted questions. So we
Yes.
have one. It says, what kind of schemes by the government or by collective groups or even private individuals are available to tackle this issue? And where can men who might be looking for this kind of help, where can they find it and how would they find it?
Okay. So unfortunately, we don't have too many things which are in place, but there can be some suggestions which can, unfortunately, we don't really have any men-centric policies by the government, but the civil society can push for it. Something like paternity leave. Now it's come into play, but we need to have more incentives. We need to have incentives for men. Paternity leave is one thing, but that's just not enough. Do we have a mental health related subsidy for men? I'm not sure. I don't think that mental health is addressed at all in the government's, in the larger scheme of things. Though I must say that companies and organizations are stepping up, and because we at Sthir do this work of workplace wellness, which essentially means addressing mental health, and most of our clients are men, and thankfully they are responding very well to our 24/7 helpline. There is one helpline called Kiran, which is still in operation and which gets the maximum number of calls. So that's one thing. Paternity related leave is one thing. We need to have more gender sensitive policies, which are not happening yet. We do have women related, we have, I don't know, many schemes for women, but we need to step up. And that would mean that there has to be some kind of pressure, civil society pressure put on the government. So there isn't that happening. We do have a whole host of helplines though, which is essentially, how do you say, extreme level. When something has gone beyond a point and you actually need to talk to someone, it's not preventive and promotive, it's the curative space, but it exists. There are many government helplines. If you look at the government websites, the health ministry, you'd find a lot of these things. But yes, we need to step up. There isn't enough happening. That's one thing about the government. Can you just reread what else was the part of the question? I think I missed something.
Sure. So it's what kind of schemes by the government or by collective groups or private individuals are available to tackle this issue? And then the second part of the question is, where and how can men who are looking for these kind of schemes and solutions, how can they go about finding it?
Okay. So there's a lot of, there are many things available for men online, and you just have to do a search. A lot of organizations, NGOs, are working in this area. So you have Men Against Violence and Abuse. That's a very active group. You also have a group which talks about domestic violence against men. Okay, I can share the details subsequently on our LinkedIn or wherever the caller is from. There are groups which cater to them, and unfortunately, I would say that more of these helping activities are happening more from the NGO sector and civil society groups or concerned citizens. You have helplines which are available to men, 24/7 helplines which are free, most of them. So we have a list of them which we can share. We'll definitely put those out. Workplaces are waking up to issues. So most of the workplaces you can ask. Paternity leave is one thing, but the kind of the reasons, if you need leave for something related to your household work or being with your children, I think that's now getting possible, because earlier on this was just an impossibility. Parents, fathers just had to pretend they had nothing but work to do. So that's one thing. A lot more needs to happen. Mass awareness campaigns need to happen. They're not happening yet. That needs to be, the media has to be engaged. I think the media is really not doing enough, because we're just doing stereotyping. When you see TV, you just see the same thing over and over again. We don't address men's issues. And we keep saying, it's all about women and women's problems, which is fine. We don't say that something is more important than the other, but we need to get there. We need mass campaigns. We need conversations happening on public platforms. We need helplines made available, but that's the one thing which is actually available. That's the one thing we can give you. We also need to negotiate at workplaces about what all men can take up, and I think it's changing slowly. Men are getting leave for, even things like adoption and things related to the family, which only women would be. Paternity leave is one thing, but it's still not equal. So yes, there's a long way to go. Some things exist, mostly in the form of helplines, but not too much. But we can keep this conversation going, because this is something which is very close to close to my heart. Because all these years, I'm seeing that this is a completely underrepresented, underserved minority. I know there'll be people who will challenge that, but I'm open to the challenge to explain why it is so.
Yeah, and
I've answered your question to some extent.
I think whoever has asked this question will be more than satisfied. And as you said, the materials and all the links and everything, I think, will be in the saved version of this conversation. And I kind of felt a little bad when you said that you could keep this conversation going, because I would love to keep the conversation going as well. But I think we have reached the end of our allotted time. And Deepa, it has been so illuminating to talk to you and, understand about, how the patriarchy can really damage the mental health of the men in our society. And, I was thinking all the big ticket issues, with the domestic violence and things like that, but you brought it to such a intimate level, with anxiety and emotional stunting. And I had never even considered that anxiety could be something that is caused by a patriarchal system as well. So I really wanted to thank you. And actually, you know what, we did get one more question. So if
Please, let's take it.
we can ask that one more question, and then
Yes.
we can end the conversation.
Sure.
So the question is, body image issues aren't something usually associated with men, but I see a lot of guys struggling with it. Why do you think this is rarely talked about? And what advice would you give to men facing body image pressure?
Thank you for asking this question. This had come to my mind, but we lack of time and the important issues had to come up, and then of course everything is important. Body image issue is a very big thing when it comes to tackling patriarchy. Again, as I said, boys are supposed to be strong. They're supposed to be protectors. Look at our festivals. We have Bhai Dooj. So there's this whole pressure to look after, to protect, to be there, to serve. Traditionally, the parents expect the boy to take charge. He has to protect the sister. He has to protect everyone. Now, who protects the boy? Who looks after him? Where does he find his space? And to whom does he go to when he needs help? There's one thing I like to say always, that you can't pour from an empty jug. And we are making, all our boys are slowly growing up in such a way that their jugs are empty. They're just pouring it out. Okay? They're pouring it out. They're being good sons. They're trying their hardest to be good partners, good fathers. There's a lot of expectation, and these are in very material terms. Body image is a huge thing, because now suddenly, with the way the media has exploded, you are expected to look in a certain way, dress in a certain way, groom in a certain way, because that you're a public. I don't know. We are all pictures on Instagram, and we are whatever. So yes, this is another patriarchal offshoot of the demands of patriarchy, that you behave and act in a certain way. If it's true for women, it's equally true for men, and more so because we don't address it. It's not something that we talk about, and yet you can just see the number of grooming, what do you call it, products coming out. We have special salons for men and all that. It puts pressure. Because it's all about projecting an image, as it is for women to look in a certain way, to act in a certain way, to behave in a certain way. This 6-pack, or I don't know, 8-packs, I don't know what's going on. You have elderly actors trying to look 20 years young, and that is considered to be, your, what is that word? Those are your role models. Tremendous pressure. Your work life, I don't know who has the time to spend 2 hours or 3 hours in a gym every day. Most of us are working people. We spend 8 to 10 hours at work and commuting. And we all know that work is not within 8 hours. It usually goes with who has the time to do this, and where is this vanity going to take us? So I think just like the women who have been facing these body image issues for a long time, I think men need to take it head on, and you need to start conversations. When you talk about, when you see the ads, it's really scary that how a man can use a certain perfume and then attract people. This is nonsense. It puts pressure on you to buy something which is so expensive, and then try to become somebody that you're not, because you must act in a certain way. I think it's important to start a conversation like we've started with, the girls and women, that what is it that you are? Are you trying to be a role? Are you just playing a role, acting something? Or are you yourself? Because if you want to keep on trying to show a face of a certain kind, then clearly you're not comfortable in your own skin. We need to get back to that. Okay, we need to get men, like we are doing it with girls and our women, that you are worthy the way you are.
Mhm.
You're not worthy because you can buy, just like you're not worthy because you can buy a diamond for 1 lakh rupees, which could be, part of your salary or your entire salary or 2 months salary. I don't know. You're not worthy because you have 6-packs, or you do your hair in a certain way, or you use a certain product. These are all advertising gimmicks, because people need to sell stuff. And remember, anything that you see in the media space, when they're selling you something, it's never something that you need. It's not a necessity at all. That's why they have to sell it to you. The necessities nobody sells. So you're good the way you are, and you're worthy because you are who you are. You're not worthy because you look in a certain way, or you use a certain thing, or you earn so much. I think somewhere, uh, and that's the last thing I'll say, we need to look at self-care, and we need to look at self-care in a very kind way, in a comprehensive way. Self-care does not mean going to a spa, an expensive spa one day, or using that fancy perfume, I don't know, whatever it is called, or buying your wife or girlfriend a diamond, which is all peripheral stuff. Self-care is when you learn to look after your physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual self. And there is a balance all of there. And your sense of worthiness does not come from anything external that is given to you. Do not believe all those things, because mostly people are telling you, whoever's telling you these things want you to buy something, and it's a commercial transaction. So you're worthy as you are, and we valued you. What would we do without the men? We all know that they are the second pillar of society. You know, if women hold up one pillar, men hold the other. And I'm always very, very concerned about our young boys, young men, because I feel that they need to have psychological safe spaces, and it's our duty to create them. You know, and that is where the men and women have to come together and stop this, binary of something against the other. Patriarchy is hard on all of us. We need to figure out a way to bypass this and be our own authentic true selves. So don't worry too much about those body image issues. They're only given to you because there are new things people need to say. You have to keep away from that.
Really. And speaking of those different selves and how we need to, focus on nurturing those different selves,
Yes.
we have one more question, which is
Yes.
actually now they're coming in thick and fast, so I think we're in a good space.
We will take them. Yes.
What are some practical steps you'd recommend for men to start working on their mental health? Are there specific tools or practices that you think are particularly helpful for men dealing with these pressures?
Yes. Thank you for asking this question. All of you, all the men listening in, thank you for your, patient hearing. I think in the process, it's another thing that patriarchy does to you, because you're a nurturer and provider. You are just pouring and pouring and pouring, and then one day you know nothing's coming out because you are not replenishing. How do you do that? Take a checklist, make a, it's like a short thing that you sit by yourself on a certain day and ask yourself, like we do our physical health checkups. I hope everybody's doing them, because however strong you are, we all need to look after our physical health. So get that annual checkup done. That's the first step, but that's not the last. Okay, that's only going to give you your physical indicators. Your mental health indicators are very simple. Are you happy most of the time? Can you sleep well at night? Do you have a set of friends where you can go when you're happy, when you're sad? Are there people you can reach out to? Do you have 3 a.m. friends? Do you know, if you don't have those, do you have a space where you think you can unburden? I'm talking about a mental health helpline. If you're not aware of it, keep it with you. If not you, a friend of yours would require it. So emotionally, how are you right now? Because that's a check we never do to ourselves. Check. There's a checklist available, and I think you've given us a good idea. We will put out information about what men can do. Your social health also has to be seen. We are realizing that because we are going online again over and like so much, our friend circle is disappearing and vanishing. It's also maybe contracting, maybe not disappearing. So you need to nurture those friendships. You need to take the me time out. Okay, you are not 24/7 on the job of being a provider. So take a break. Everybody deserves a break. Look after your physical health, your emotional health. I told you. Are you sleeping well? Do you have a set of close friends you can talk to? Is there a place, a safe space where you can speak out? If yes, that's good. If not, then we need to do something about it before a crisis comes. Your social health is important too. You need your friendships. You need your close ones. You need that small circle where you can reach out when you are in trouble. Okay. Then your occupational health. Okay, this is an important one for men, because a lot of men end up doing things which they're good at, but they may not love to do. Are you happy at your job? What is it that you would change if you could? If you can't change your work or your profession, how can you make it better? Can you find a niche which you really enjoy? Because we work 8 to 10 hours in a day. We can't be doing something that we don't like. And I know a lot of people do not like what they do. Okay? That's not a good way to live. It affects their entire, physical and mental. It's health is not just one aspect. So your occupational health is important. Financial health. Um, Financial health is important. I'm sorry, the word was financial health. How is your finance? How are your finances? Do you invest? What kind of investments you do? Who advises you? Do you have the right advisory? Who do you reach out to? Or you just do it, as per something that you've learned earlier? Don't do that. Financial planning, financial health is very important. Sometimes it's financial health, which if you're out of a job, you don't have enough money, your physical, mental, social, emotional health is going to go for a toss. So your financial health is important. Don't underestimate it. Okay. Many times we just earn, but we don't know how to save. and we just keep on dispensing because that's what is expected of us. Please check that. And last but not the least is spiritual health. I am not talking about religious activities. If you're into those, great. If they give you pleasure, if they give you peace, wonderful. But spiritual health is when you connect with yourself. This is where I'm talking about the me time. Do you have time to reflect on your day? Do you have time to reflect on your decisions? Do you have time to sit back and process whatever you've gone through? Because I know for sure most men don't do that. A very simple way to do that would be reflect at the end of the day, journal if you want to, but at least go through the day so you have some idea about what's happening. You know, we do it for our workplaces. We have our annual reports, we have our appraisals, we have meetings, we have everything, but we don't do it for ourselves. We don't know where we are going. Many times a person comes to me in the counseling space, and when I ask them about themselves, they have never thought about these things. For all the men, it's important that all these 6 pillars of wellness are looked at, and they are very simple, but they need to be done. You need to have good physical, emotional, occupational, financial, and social, of course, and your spiritual health. Seek something that gives you joy. Take a break. Take a break alone. It's completely okay not to be burdened with family responsibilities 24/7. Everybody deserves a break. So do that. Which way you'll all do that. If you want to know more, we can have maybe another conversation sometime. Yes.
Great. Now, this next point, I'm not sure, it's framed as a statement, but
Okay.
I don't know if they meant it as a question, but I'll read it as it's been given to me. So the statement is, while bringing up our children, we should ask them to emote out irrespective of the fact of the child is of which gender. Now, I agree with that, but let's hear your thoughts as well, Deepa.
Totally. I think it's probably a statement, and it's not happening, it's not happening. Like, I read somewhere, and this is so beautiful, tears are not a sign of weakness. They are a sign of your being alive. That's what they've always been. When a baby is born, it cries out. Tears are a very good way of regulating yourself emotionally. Emotional regulation, that's the word. Most of us lack it because we've never looked at our emotions in that way. A lot of being angry, being upset, being depressed, it's all because we are not able to regulate ourselves emotionally. So crying is a very good way of regulating yourself. When the pressure builds up, the pressure cooker whistles. That's your whistle. So yes, please go ahead. It's perfectly okay for grown men to cry because they have feelings like everybody else. There is no difference between a boy and a girl. There's no difference between a man and a woman. It's just the way we have socialized ourselves and repressed ourselves, and then we are suffering. A lot of our illnesses, and I'm talking about things like diabetes, blood pressure, are directly an effect of our emotional and mental health. It is proven now. You can go out and look it up. Most 90 plus of our physical health issues are psychosomatic. They start as a psychological issue and there is no way out, so they become somatic. Very few are psychological. So that's there is evidence, to back this up. So look after your mental health. It's the most important.
And can you just quickly, before I return to the questions, for those who might not know the difference, can you explain the difference between psychological and somatic problems?
Okay, I'll do that. So the illnesses which happen to us, like, if you have an infection where you have a stomach upset, you've got fever, you've got high blood pressure, these are things that happen to the body, and these are measurable in the body by various ways. It could be fever, it could be a feeling of nausea, it could be a feeling of whatever. So anything that happens to the body is somatic. Okay. And a lot of things that happen to the body are acceptable, and they have, like if you were to take leave, for example, because you had fever or you had a stomach infection, it's completely okay. Nobody's going to say, oh, deal with it and come back to it. Now, emotional issues are slightly different. We all have thoughts racing in our mind all the time, and feelings and hurt and happiness and everything else. But this is invisible. That's the invisible part of our lives, which actually rules us. We are not. Thoughts are coming and going all the time, and many of the thoughts are uncomfortable. They could be competitive, they could be anger, they could be sadness. All these do not have a place in our public life because we don't speak about them too much. Most of us don't, and men not at all. So whatever affects you emotionally, if you've had, a situation where you're in deep grief, somebody has passed away or something has happened, or if you're hurt, or if you're angry, or if you're sad, these kind of feelings can go get lodged in the body. Okay, while they may look like a passing phase, they can affect you physically. Somebody who's grieving can also become sick easier because their overall immunity goes down. So if your psychological health is not fine, there's a high possibility that you will get something which will manifest itself physically. Okay, so you have to be careful. Most physical illnesses start with a psychological issue. Okay, and that connection is not very well known, and somehow we've never pondered over it. So if a person is unhappy for a very long time or sad for a very long time, the likelihood of getting sick is very high, because somehow the sickness will get attention, but their feeling low or their emotional health doesn't. Most illnesses that happen to you are because your psychological health is not fine. And a lot of it happens for men. Younger and younger people are getting blood pressure, high blood pressure, diabetes, and so many other illnesses. We are seeing cardiac arrests happen in people as young as 35, and it is definitely linked to your emotional health. So look after your emotional health. So psychological is what happens in your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And for the physical health is what we call somatic, that is evident in the body. I hope the difference is clear.
Understood. So we'll answer two final questions, and then we're going quite over time. So the first one is a very direct question, which is, will implementing a uniform civil code help in demolishing patriarchal mental pressure on men?
Oh, that's a nice question. The Uniform Civil Code is it's being written about and spoken about, where we're trying to bring equity, which is a good thing. Okay. Now there are points and counterpoints. My take on this is that our way of life, our religion, or our spiritual anchor or way of life, whatever you call it, is very deeply ingrained. Okay, so while we have a very robust law against rape, we have it against domestic violence, the issues persist. So while a uniform civil code might do it, there's no absolutely, that's the ideal situation. But the problems are social. The problems are related to tradition and our behaviors. So we will have to do some more work, because, with the laws coming in, the law is great to help us, but the change has to happen from within. Most of us are slaves to our, to some belief or tradition, which we're not even aware of. So those are the things we need to address. We need to look within, as a person, as a society, as groups. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Because there are certain things which need to be removed from the root, and the roots are in our beliefs and traditions. So we need to. It would definitely help. But patriarchy is, has been around for a long time. It has been a way of life. It was probably created for some kind of convenience. But like everything that is created for convenience, it also has an offshoot which is not so convenient. It any system will have something which doesn't work very well. And that's what patriarchy is about. The challenge is to change from within. And for that, we need to take the whole society. We can't just work with one group, which is why domestic violence is not an issue of just somebody hitting someone. It's an issue of, do we believe in equity? Do we believe that everybody is equal? Do we believe that violence is right? Those are the difficult questions that we'll have to answer. A lot of soul searching will be required. I think that would be, small groups and individuals need to start. So yes, a universal civil code might help, but the change is the change that is required is much, much deeper. And we need to be ready to accept, at least acknowledge that there is something.
Yeah, I feel like, the change needs to be societal before it can enter into any kind of legal framework.
Seriously. The legal frameworks help. They are helpful, but the
They do.
change doesn't. Child marriage continues to happen today, and let's not be. I don't know. Most people believe it's over. It's not over. It's
Oh,
happening in every state. So we have a law, but why is it happening? So something like that.
yeah, basically, it's like if people don't want the law, then what's the point of implementing it? They'll just keep
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
it.
It's culturally and socially.
So the final question. So this user says that can school interventions be done at the high school or secondary school level? Uh, so they said that yes, schools now have an on-campus counselor, but it is largely a case-to-case basis. What are but are there ways to intervene in a format where school-wide sensitization can happen?
Thank you for bringing this question up. Very, very, very well said. I think the schools are invaluable. We have started environment education, we've started gender education in schools. There are, I think, the municipal schools in Mumbai, at least because I've been connected with them, do have a module on, gender equity. We can, so that's just the beginning. But I think this conversation needs to start really young, really early. Why even high school? Why not kindergarten? Why can't we start the conversation so young that we don't have to set anything right? That's my big concern. Young kids come, very, very young children, and we damage them and then we try to put things right. So can we start it really early? Can we train our teachers? Maybe that could help. Maybe the school system needs to internalize this because it's a very, very big issue. When we are learning about caring for our environment and climate change, that's outside of us. What about what's happening within us? What about what's happening to our, little boys who are taken through something, and then by the time high school comes, they're already 12, 13 years old. Many things are already ingrained. So we know for sure that whatever happens in families, school can be a great place where change can happen. So yes, I would say start young. Start it as soon as you start other subjects. And that would probably make a huge difference because um, school is a place where change and education takes place. So yes, that's a lovely suggestion. I think along with the gender equity training, we need to especially talk to boys and address issues and start with teachers trainings, because there's no point in teaching children something and they being taught by people who have a very different set of values.
Awesome.
It's very important to do that. Thank you for the question. Very important one.
Yes, we got some absolutely fantastic questions, but we've reached the end of them, and I think now it's a good time to sign off on this conversation. I know that we could keep going on this, but we do have a limit on that. But Deepa, thank you so much for speaking with me, and also thank you to Sthir and Aditi for giving me the chance to speak with you, because it's such an honor, and thank you guys so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. This is a seamless conversation, and I've really enjoyed responding to all the questions that you raised. Thank you for your sensitivity. You have a presence out there. Please take this message out because it's our influencers we are looking at. The whole world looks up at you. Thankfully, we have, our media is a lot less controlled and is so much more democratic. This message has to go out. We have ignored our voice for a very, very long time. It's time that we address them and we step forward, all of us. Thank you so much for that.
Amen.
So powerful. Thank you so much, Deepa, and thank you, Vedant, as well, for coming over to Sthir. From all of us at Sthir, thank you to everyone who joined in, asked questions, and stayed this long. I know we promised 4 to 5, but as both Deepa and Vedant mentioned, this is a topic that requires a lot more of a deep dive, and this is just the beginning. And we hope to bring you more such conversations in the future. And if you have any questions, anyhow you'd like to reach us, you can drop us a message on LinkedIn. You can email us at consult@sthirindia.com, or you can learn more about what we do at www.sthirindia.com. Thank you, everyone, again. Have a lovely evening and a very happy International Men's Day and Men's Mental Health Awareness Month to you all. Namaste.
Thank you and namaste.